All right, so I'll get going, and I'm sure people will start to trickle in here. But welcome everybody to the Young Architects and Emerging Professionals Committee (AIA) East Bay presentation of an overview and a talk of the licensure process and the ARE and overall NCARB review with Parva, our special guest here, Parva Markiw, as someone coming from abroad and or not abroad, but well, somewhat abroad, and then also from the other side of our country here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Are you in Pittsburgh or just Pennsylvania?
Pittsburgh, yeah.
Pittsburgh, yeah. So we have a special guest tonight, so I'm happy to have her on board because she is an expert when it comes down to the NCARB process, as well as helping us learn more about Emerging Professionals Committee that she's doing really great things out in her Pennsylvania chapter, Pittsburgh chapter that we want to hear a little bit about as well. But thank you everybody for coming in. Our Young Architects and Emerging Professionals Committee, we try and put on a monthly event that focuses on trying to enhance your journey as you go through the journey of either it's their college career or a young, emerging professional career that will help you, give you the tools to move forward in whatever aspect that you're going for right now. So we do firm tours, we do construction tours, we do a life of the architect, day in the life of the architect, the mentorship program, trying to restart this ARE boot camp here soon, hopefully. And then, just doing fireside chats with special guests like Parva here to gain more knowledge about some of the things we're always looking at that we don't necessarily maybe get taught in school, but we definitely need as tools in parts of our industry, in the architecture and engineering industry. So tonight we're talking about getting licensed, which is a hot topic for a lot of recent grads, but also emerging professionals. And Parva, like I said, comes from Pittsburgh, but she's also a native Iranian and a project architect at Design Group, located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, working on a multitude of healthcare and higher education projects with a passion for creating long-lasting impact on different scales. So Parva is currently serving at her second year as a chair of the AIA Pennsylvania's Emerging Professional Committee. And at the local level, she's a member of the Pittsburgh Equity and Diversity Inclusion Committee, Women Plus in Design Committee in Pittsburgh, and a part of Pittsburgh's Young Architects Forum. So she's got a lot of experience in what we typically try and do out here in the East Bay. And her focus is an involvement through various committees to help emerging professionals at different stages in their career, and also amplify voices of minority and underrepresented groups. So welcome, Parva.
Thank you. Thank you for that great introduction. So I'm going to put the Zoom over here. And so if you need to stop me, please just holler.
No worries.
I'm going to share my screen and the presentation. So thank you, everyone, and thanks for having me tonight. This is a pleasure. It's great to be here and talk to you, emerging professionals all the way over at West Coast. As Tim mentioned, I'm all the way from East Coast in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And as already mentioned, I'm the EPIC chair, which is essentially the YAF, but at state level. So I'm going to do a little introduction about what EPIC is and what we do, and then talk about my ARE journey experiences and what that was like. So our chapter, our AIA is made up of 8 sections and chapters at state level. And you can see all the way over here in the left, that's where I'm from. And a little bit about the EPIC committee is that this was inspired by AIA New Jersey's and was modeled after that, and it was created to improve our emerging professionals' role in the community, and also create a network across the state, and overall get more emerging professionals involved in the profession and create an impact. And who we are, as you know, you're emerging professionals, you're part of YAF, is that by definition, AIA defines emerging professionals as students, as associate members, and also licensed members who have been practicing less than 10 years. And our mission at EPIC is to promote professional growth and connecting emerging professionals. It's to build network and promote our professional growth and leadership skills, and connect with our chapters and sectors that I just showed through advocacy, education, and service. And what we do is that we are mostly focused on building relationships, developing our leadership skills, and continuously increasing emerging professionals' involvement in the profession. And you'll get a little snapshot of who we are and our leaderships, leaders who are serving on the EPIC committee. As I mentioned, I am the chair, and then we have YARD, previously known as YARD and currently known as YAR. We have a STAR, or previously known as a RAD. We have an architect licensing advisor on the board. We have an advocacy director, a mentorship director, and a service director, as well as we try to have a representative from each section, each chapter and sector from each area of Pennsylvania, to have all the different voices and all the different aspects of regions covered. And there are multitudes of initiatives that we are in charge of. One is EPIC Firm Recognition, EPIC Architectural School Visits, our PALM program, our Paul Maines ARE grant, our EDI, which was recently added in advocacy. And our EPIC Firm Recognition, which was founded in 2016, is to recognize firms who have an outstanding commitment to developing to the development of their emerging professionals. And this program is set out by an emerging professional first nominating their firm, and they select through a multitude of questionnaire. They select and answer those answer to those questionnaire, and then same set of questions get answered by a leadership in that firm, and then we compare at the EPIC firm. We compare the two, and if they overlap, then they get recognized for being in front of promoting and supporting their emerging professionals. If there are some discrepancies, then we write a letter to the firms to let them know that there were some discrepancies and perhaps how to go about navigating through, maybe having an open dialogue or reprinting some of the benefits or benefit packages that they might be having, and work through those miscommunications that have happened between what we receive from their emerging professionals and their leadership. And you will see that since the inception of it, we've been recognizing a lot of different firms. And our second initiative, being EPIC Architectural School, is that we visit NAB accredited schools around Pennsylvania to talk to them about who and what EPIC is, and promote AIA and AIA membership, as well as informing them about NCARB process, ARE, AXB hours. And some of these schools, through these visits, we've learned that they rely on our presentation to inform them about what students need to do once they have graduated and entered the workforce. And some of them are already prepared and have their own presentation as far as NCARB goes. In the recent months, we've talked about visiting non-accredited schools because there are different pathways to licensure and becoming a licensed architect. And so we are gathering and collecting information and just gathering information about all the different schools that are around Pennsylvania, and then getting started with setting up a visit and doing the same type of visit, doing the same type of presentation, but a little bit different that might benefit them more specifically. Our third initiative, promoting advocacy and licensure through mentorship, which is, I guess, very similar to what Tim was just explaining about your mentorship group, is that its purpose is to connect students with folks who have just recently been licensed, people who are on their licensure path, and experienced architects, connect them together and mentor up and down. We like to know that there's always something to learn, whether it be and everyone has something to teach, whether that be a student who's just going through the curriculum and the program is changing, and maybe perhaps the program in which they now do design is different than an experience, what an experienced professional have gone through and experienced. And obviously, a person who's going through ARE journey now has a lot to share and teach folks who have who are going or thinking about going through that. And so there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to teach. And so our commitment for that program is just to meet at least 3 times for 1 hour each over a semester. Low-key kind of commitment. And in 2020, when everything went shut down and we were all virtual at EPIC level, we started to have a conversation about how can we still continue having POM, this program, but hold it statewide. And we decided to open it up at state level. And since everything was already virtual, to connect them across the state. And it actually turned out to be a really good program, and we are planning on doing it again this year. This past fall was a little bit of a trial and error where Pittsburgh decided to have in-person meetings, but Philadelphia and other regions, Central and other regions, decided that they wanted to wait and have another virtual. Our 4th initiative, which is a Paula Maines ARE grant, is a grant that's given out by, it's technically funded by our state, but it was established in 2015 in remembrance by Paula Maines herself, who was a very inspiring and dedicated and had a great work ethic. And so we give grants to up to 3 individuals, about $705 that covers the cost of 3 ARE exams. And then our EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion, came right about the time that we were witnessing uprises and some tragedies, I can't say that word tonight, around our nation as we were still going through the pandemic. And we were watching a national put out some resolutions, and our state of Pennsylvania had also some resolutions that was very much centered and focused on equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so at EPIC level, we wanted to also keep in mind how we can put a lens that's an EDI lens to all of the initiatives that we have. And one of the very first things that we've done is that for our EPIC firm recognition, to our set of questionnaires, we added a EDI section that at this stage was more of information gathering, because we wanted to know how some of these firms that year after year try to apply for the recognition are doing. What do they look like? Do they have EDI committee within the firm? Do they have variations of people in position of high position or leadership position? And so it's been actually surprisingly good surprise when we received the responses. And so what we try to do from here on out is take this information and tweak and edit it here, so we are improving our community and improving our environment as we go forward. We'd like to keep on building, on improving, rather than staying at that status quo. And last but not least, our advocacy initiative is about getting more emerging professionals involved at the governmental or in the legislative process. And we have an advocacy director, as I mentioned, who is the perfect conduit and a direct connection, because he is a member of our AIAPA government affair that he sits on, and he tries to get more emerging professionals involved in changing, seeing change or being part of a change at in the government and the government level. So we have multitudes of different events like the district days or the action days, where we like to see as many emerging professionals as possible to be involved, to meet their state representative, to meet the legislator, and get connected and network and talk to them. And I think that's it as far as EPIC goes. So I'll go into my ARE journey, and I created this little line chart, essentially, just to show. So my ARE journey as
visual people, I love it. That's great.
So as Tim mentioned, I am Iranian native. So I was born and raised in Iran and came to US in 2004. So it's been a while since I've been here, but going through the ARE journey was definitely one of the hardest things I had done. I was having multitudes of issues between not knowing how to take a standardized test and not doing how to do well on a timed test, as well as just trying to navigate through questions and the program itself, right? So there are glitches and sometimes issues with the program itself. So I actually started back in early 2016, and I did not have a good start. I think I was in 4.0 version and had taken, I think it might have been SPD or CD, and failed both of those right off the back and did not have a good start. So then I moved on to something that was a lot simpler. It was just the vignette type of a exam where you had to just read a prompt or something and draw. And it was just the vignette section. There was no exam or no multiple questions to it. And that I passed. And then a series of fails after that, up until I had another pass. It might have been some SPD or something. Again, these were all in 4.0. And I had, as you can see, I've taken 20 tests overall, and I had at the end 6 passes. I only needed to have 5. One of them didn't even, as I transitioned from 4.0 to 5.0, one of them didn't even needed to be transferred. So I had 6 passes, though I only needed to have 5, and I had 14 fails, so which is a lot. But that's what my journey looked like. It was pretty much like it was a hurdle. It was a tough obstacle. It was hard to overcome and try to keep at it while you're seeing a lot of fails, or while you're putting a lot of time and effort and energy into something and it does not turn out the way you want it to. And so for me, what I learned is that I needed to be more focused. I was studying a lot and I was overwhelmed with the amount of information that's out there, that's online, that I'm finding. But my thoughts and the way I digest information is not very organized. And so I came across actually Michael Risica's ARE bootcamp, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Michael Risica, but he's very much before the pandemic had said, and virtual world was, well, it's on the way. He would take a lot of trips. I think he did an East Coast. I think he made his way all the way to California. But he's dedicated. He's essentially someone who also had a lot of trouble going through the ARE exams. And so he was dedicated in creating a more equitable process, trying to help folks go through this process by helping them and putting a rigorous schedule and program together. So I joined the boot camp in 2017. And right off the bat, I wanted to pass this one exam so I could then transition into 5.0. And I was just sick of having fails after fails. So I joined the boot camp. And then right after that, I passed the exam. And then after that, I had a series of fails, and those you can see, those are all PPP, PDD fails there in the 2 at the end where I passed them. But I took some time off in between. I got married, so life still happens. Although I wanted to, try to condense it as much as possible, you can't stop living while you're going through your ARE journey. And I would say that going through the boot camp helped me a lot, because it helped me get connected with folks all over, actually, US, from different, just like you guys, from different time zones. And one, I was able to make friendships that I'm still in connection with. And also it helped me it helped me stay accountable, and we were responsible for checking in on each other and having presentations that we were in charge of. And also we learned that every person or everyone has some strengths and some weaknesses, and some people were, good at understanding code. Some people were good at understanding and really well versed in lead than others, depending on their experience or where they worked and so on and so forth. So we tried to really utilize that and really help spread that knowledge a lot. So people would set up meetings or hold these meetings, and they were all recorded, which was great. So you could go back and watch them. And then just, taking some time to go through these with someone who's also going through the same thing was really helpful, knowing that you're not alone. That was really helpful for me. And as I said, just that accountability, knowing that you're going through it with someone and you can sit down and dedicate a few nights a week to just studying and sitting down with that person, scheduling that time and saying, okay, we're just going over like as many questions as we possibly can, and just doing that over and over and over again until you get familiarized. Because a lot of it for me was just mental block, knowing how to right off the bat, like do a process of elimination, how to get through and just cross off things that just don't make sense and they're throw offs and they're just trying to distract you. Those were some of the things that I needed to learn and I didn't have as a background knowledge. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Parva. Appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's been it's a journey for all of us, that's for sure. Can you maybe, and I want to encourage everybody that's here, if you got a question, just feel free to turn on your mic and shout it out, because this is supposed to be very informal discussions. We're a small group. Most of our meetings are kind of the small group meetings. So please feel comfortable opening up. I know a lot of you have questions about maybe the process, certain tests, or those kind of. The only thing we can't do is obviously divulge any information or answers to any tests or those kinds of things. So, but Parva's your graph here, which again, like I said, visually we all kind of understand what's happening, but it represents a lot of other emerging professionals pathway to getting licensure. It is challenging. It is a struggle. A lot of times people describe the test as not only do you need to know the knowledge of the test, but you actually need to know how to take the test. It's a test to take the test. So, understanding how people write questions and how, understanding what really, after you filter through the questions and the answers, what are they really trying to ask you, and what are you really trying to take out of each question? So very understandable. I share a similar kind of pathway. I failed the first 3 tests that I took, and then found different resources. Like you took the Micro Rosica boot camp, which is a great resource. For those of you who don't know Micro Rosica, take a look at it. Young Architect podcast. Check out the ARE Facebook group. Very great resource for anybody that's looking for a forum, or at least to listen to somebody who's been through it and has a lot of guests. One of the ways I found Parva was through Micro Rosica, his podcast. So I encourage all of you to go check that out. But hey, yeah, Tim, yeah.
Can you spell that? Michael, his last name, Rosica?
RIC Rosica. Look up Young Architect podcast and Google it, and then it'll come up right away.
All right, thanks, Tim.
Great question, Josh. Thank you. But anyways, found different resources. So if you're on a certain pathway and things aren't working out the way you thought they were going to work out, I encourage you. There are a lot of resources out there that could be better for you in terms of your learning abilities, your learning strengths and weaknesses. And I found just a different set of books and a different place to study that helped me focus. I ended up listening to music, kind of sound blocking music. And that, to me, I ended up passing all the tests after that and kept going on my journey. But it was just something mentally that you have to think about, and how your body and your mind can process information and able to absorb it and retain it. And short amount of time so that you can take the test. So thank you again. Parva, what I wanted to ask you, because I know you're very familiar with the NCARB process, is there anything you want to give in terms of advice to the emerging professionals in this forum right here, in terms of like maybe first steps? Like what do you think are the best first steps for someone that's just starting to, maybe just got graduated? Is it finding a forum? Is it finding the right resources? Is it maybe researching which test to take first? What's your advice there?
Yeah, perhaps I should have shared our NCARB presentation that we share with the schools for tonight. But first step, and I don't know if this is a requirement, maybe in some schools or all schools, but it was for where I went to school at Kent State University, where we had to open up a NCARB account. I think we were in our 3rd or 4th year that we had to start opening an account and start logging those hours, whether that's internship or starting, I guess, a summer job at an architecture school. So, but having that account and just establishing that, because that takes some time and it requires some transcript back from the school. So it takes some time. You want to start that, get that opened and fill that information and make sure that all the necessary information is all in place before you can register and start studying and going through that process. I'd say that's definitely a first step. And then after that is just setting your mind about what you want to study and set your mind to it, and have goals set. I think specific for me, it was like it was important to have a timeline and know that I wanted to, I want to take a test, or I want to take this test around this time. By the end of this month, I'd like to be done with at least materials, and in a couple of weeks I like to review those materials and maybe review flashcards, and every time in between just taking as many quizzes as possible. We're lucky to live, I'd say I was lucky to be studying for ARE exams at a time when there are a lot more resources around than what my wife went through, or when I hear folks who are 10, 20 years older than me, where the exam used to be once a year or 2 times a year, and they had only a small, short period of time to take it all at once or something like that. So, I feel very lucky to be at a time where there were a lot of resources. There was Michael Risico around, which was not available at some point. And to just take advantage, knowing of all those different resources. As Tim said, for me, it was important to get the information on multitudes of different ways, like listening to audio version, as well as following along, reading like a overview of the chapter as I'm listening to it, and then taking the test or taking a quiz after that to know that I've retained the knowledge. Or if you're good with just sitting down and reading, and that's how you digest that information. Knowing how you retain and how you absorb information is, I'd say, is a very big portion of going through ARE journey. But back to your question about what to do with NCARB is get that account opened. We have an architect licensing advisor. We also have an architect licensing advisor in my firm. So getting in contact with who that person is, who your contact person is important, because everyone's journey is a little bit different. Maybe not everyone came from a NAB accredited school, so you might have to establish your NCARB or registration through a different state, if that makes any sense, in order for you to go through licensure and getting licensed.
Yeah, great overview. Appreciate it. And just to add on to that, everyone, like you said, everyone's got a different educational background, or maybe even you're just getting into architecture without a formal education. NCARB helps to outline the process depending on where you are in your career and or educational career. So I encourage all of you to go check out the NCARB.org website. It's got a lot of great resources to help you, depending on where you are in your pathway, to get in line and get licensed, because everyone's different. Everyone's got a different background. So The good thing is NCARB's got a program and a plan for each of you, depending on where you come from. So there is an opportunity no matter what background you have. So that's great news. And I did want to add on as well, because Parva had mentioned the Pennsylvania connections, the Yard, who are the Young Architects regional directors, and we also in the East Bay, if you aren't familiar, we have those same resources here as well. So if anybody needs connections to those kinds of resources, to reach out and get further connected with some of our regional directors, as well as the California committee advisors, let me know or reach out to me via email. You can do that through the Young Architects at aiaeastbay.com or .org email, or check us out on the website. Because again, I know a lot of people have questions as you go through the process, and you just can't necessarily jump onto a Zoom like this and ask them. So if anybody has questions in the future, let me know as well. Dan, I want to shift it over to you. What do you tell us about, any resources you had? I know you got licensed kind of like I did, maybe more than, obviously less than 10 years ago, but so recently I think you may have done even 4.0 as a way to get licensed. Was there any resources you thought were beneficial or helpful that maybe you can pass on to our guests?
Sure. It was 2016, so it's been a few years, but it was ARI 4.0. And similarly, I found it really useful to get into a group that is taking exams. And so I found a group. I was working for a firm in San Francisco at the time, so I joined a group in San Francisco that was taking exams every month or two and kind of had study sessions. And so I found that extremely useful. Also, I think there's a lot more resources out there now than there was then, but I found the written resources provided by my firm to be helpful. So it's always good to check what types of resources, whether digital or like printed study books, your firm has to offer, because even if they're a little outdated, they can be extremely useful for reading on the commute or things like that. And then just like you two, I also listen to as many like podcasts and things like any listening materials that I could find, which I feel like at the time were pretty few and far between, but the ones I could find, I found very helpful. So just kind of worked through it, took as many exams as I could in as short a time as possible while I was still fresher out of school. So still in kind of test taking mentality, and it worked out pretty well. So.
Nice. And I apologize. I should have introduced Dan. Dan's our co-chair here for Young Architects and Emerging Professionals. Him and I've been doing this for years now, so I just feel like I get used to us being here. So Dan's a great resource as well, coming from a great background as well. So please reach out to him if anybody's got any questions. So we did have one question about resources, so I hope we answered that with all three of us. I think kind of giving our just general overview of what we used. I know I used physical books when I was studying, the Kaplan books, the Ballast books. Also, I do think that the social aspect of studying too helps me stay on track. So finding a study group, finding an online forum. I think the study group thing to help you keep on a progression, as opposed to, doing a test or maybe studying for a test and then stopping because, life gets in the way or project deadlines get in the way. To have that team behind you saying, hey, Tim or Josh or Lily or someone like that, are you ready for the test coming up? Did you study, or do you have any questions about that? And so I think, like Parva, she was part of the ARE boot camp. I think there's a strong connection there with a lot of users that can keep you on track. I would encourage all of you to find a small group of friends or a boot camp that can help keep you on schedule, as well as just motivated to continue to take the test. Because I think the biggest piece of advice I would give anybody taking tests is just get it done sooner than later. Because life gets in the way. You may get married, you find out you want to build your own house, and things go things go sideways building your own house, or you have kids, or you get promoted and your job just gets crazy. So if you're just getting out of school, I would say get going now. Just get it out of the way. You've got that studying mentality already. Kind of keep that ball going, and don't sit on it, because I think a lot of people want to just enjoy the break of not having to be in school anymore, which is obviously fantastic. And you're starting your career and you want to focus on that. But I encourage you all to treat getting licensed like a part-time job. You got to go to it maybe every other day. You got to put in 4 hours every other day, and then on weekends you hit that long shift for 8 hours. Clock in, punch in, and commit to a schedule. Just like if you were getting paid by somebody else, some other small firm, or you're doing side work, whatever it is. Just treat it like that, and I guarantee you'll help yourself, motivate yourself to continue moving forward, and in the long process, because it is a long process. And out here in Pittsburgh or in Pennsylvania, do you have to do a supplemental exam too to get licensed? No. It's just the AREs.
Yeah.
So one thing I did want to talk about briefly is the CSE, and that's the California Supplemental Exam. And so a lot of you will take that in order to get licensed in California. And so that's the 6th or 7th exam, depending on which number of exams you've taken at this point. It's another written test, multiple choice test that tests you on the California specific jurisdictional codes that have to do specifically for help me out, Dan, because it's been a while. So it has to do with earthquake loads, has to do with lateral loads, has to do with agencies that are specific for California, like Fish and Game is obviously national, but it's more specific, those kinds of things, like waterfront, beach, waterfront stuff, mountain things. So God, I'm making it sound
water
like so
quality, air quality board, water quality board, all these regulations that may not be as strict in the rest of the country focuses a lot on that. And yeah, like you said, seismic and just other fun California quirks. So it's interesting because I think it's a few months after you take the ARE, you can apply to take the CSE, and then it takes some processing time. So unless that's changed, it's like there's kind of a 6-month gap between you taking the AREs and then taking the CSE.
Yeah. And what resources did you use to study for that?
Trying to remember, there was a good book that I used. I feel like it was only like maybe 50 pages long, and I just kind of read through that after work, and I kind of went through each section. That was really good, and then attended as many classes as I could. So I think there was AA East Bay seminars on it, and AA San Francisco seminars on it. So again, that one is tough, so it's definitely worth studying up for. And I think if you fail it, you have to also wait a few months to take it again. So it's and you have to schedule it months in advance, like all these exams. So
yeah,
it's definitely worth calendaring and then studying as much as you can. I think I even read some of the like AIA kind of Division 1 specs for like, these are how contracts are set up, and this is how all this is necessary. And maybe the ARE gets into that, but the CSC kind of really digs into it. So worth paging through.
Yeah, and the AIA obviously has contracts for anybody that needs reference contracts. Be happy to help you. Sydney here at our office, or Mike at our office, is happy to get you copies that are not usable for obviously legal areas, but just for studying. So the A101, B101, the G series, any of those ones you need. The G70 series you'll need. But I used something called the whole enchilada. I don't know if the guy does it anymore.
Did have that too.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. So he does a whole CSE component, which was, he takes you full through an outline, cliff notes, audiobooks, and sample tests. So I encourage anybody that's looking at the CSE as your next step or your next test, check out the whole enchilada. Obviously, it costs money unless you can find somebody that's willing to has a
split it with you,
bootleg copy of it or something like that, or can split it with you. I know we've got a couple more minutes here, and like I said, I got a hard stop at 7. So Parva, I just wanted to, can I ask you a couple more questions just about being an EPIC leader and an EP leader?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. So I know a lot of, and we did focus a lot of time on the ARE testing, but for recent, new graduates or people who are just starting their career, what are some things like as you enter a workplace in a professional environment? I know you guys have done a really great job of honoring firms that have connected with EPs. What are some qualities that EPs should be looking for in firms that are of a quality grade, or just a good environment that would facilitate EPs progressing in their careers?
Yeah, great question, Tim. I'd say, just like Dan just mentioned about checking your firm to see if there are any resources. So things like that, knowing that, little things like that, knowing that whether or not a firm allows you to, if you have to use your own personal or vacation time, or if you are able to take off without that being a ding against your personal or vacation time for an ARE that you've scheduled. Also knowing as I was going through my ARE journey, I noticed that some firms were supportive in saying, okay, so when is that exam scheduled? We're going to be very cognizant about what you have to do, deadlines that are set around that. And there were firms that did not support or did not care that I was studying or that I had an exam coming up. So that kind of thing, knowing and asking those right questions about, are there any emerging professionals who are currently reading and actively going through the process, to ask them either directly, or knowing that people are going through it and people have gone through and have been successful means that they are doing a good job of being supportive and sponsoring the emerging professionals. So taking time off, knowing that they offer that would be great. Having resources that they're willing to share, whether that's hard copy or an online version. And I think those are the three that comes to mind at this point.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I think one question I always wanted to ask my employer as I was going through the testing is, would you pay for me to take the test?
Yeah.
Now, are you seeing a lot of firms
too, yeah.
reimbursing EPs for resources as well as actual test taking?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I forgot about the reimbursement. Yeah, so some firms either reimburse upon completion, upon passing, and they don't pay if you failed that exam. Some firms do both. They're supportive that they pay for you whether or not you failed it or passed it. So just asking those questions, what's involved and what's included as part of supporting your emerging professionals as they're going through ARE journey.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah. No, I think that's important, especially as emerging professionals. A lot of times, money's a big issue because you're probably not making a lot of it, and they're
expensive.
They're expensive, especially if you take maybe 20 of them. So it's like
exactly.
That can add up quickly. But one thing about EPs is we want to give them the confidence to do that too, because I think a lot of times there's just an overlay assumption from maybe a leadership side to an EP side. There's just like an understanding, oh, you're going to go get licensed. The leadership or the principals in that group, like, oh, that's what I did when I grew up. I did it on my own. I just want to say out loud to EPs to have the confidence to go and ask those hard questions, or maybe they're not hard questions from Parva, myself, and Dan, our perspective, because we've already been down this road. But if you're just starting out, I encourage you, get the confidence to go up and just ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. There's that old saying, it doesn't hurt to ask, and it really doesn't, because honestly, in the end, your licensure and becoming and actually gaining the knowledge through studying helps the firm that you're working for. It's always going to translate back into your work progress, how you understand the building type you're working on, or even the coordination that you're doing, or even the small details that you're creating. It all translates back into value for the firm you're working for. So you can even phrase it like that. Say, hey, look, I want to put in this upfront effort on my time to study and take the test, but can you reimburse me? Can you give me time off to do that? Because in the end, it'll pay off for you as well as myself going forward. So just keep that in mind, everybody, as you move through is sometimes, those hard questions or those questions, you don't think are appropriate. Just have the confidence to do it, because it could pay off in the end.
Absolutely. Great point, Tim. I wanted to mention a couple of things. I started from a small firm, so there was not much as far as establishing benefits or having like a package that outlaid exactly what holidays are or what vacation versus personal time is. So everything was a negotiation. And so I would just ask whether or not, hey, do you reimburse for ARE exams? Or I'm planning on, I think it was either Michael Risica or some other package I was planning on buying, or a book that I was planning on buying. And I said, would you be willing to pay for it? And then you could have that as a resource in the office. And so just having that conversation, as Tim said, it doesn't hurt to ask, to know, and they might say yes, which would be great. And the other point I wanted to make was, as you're studying and as you're trying to go through the ARE journey, one thing I tried to do is, like, as I was, depending on what exam I was studying for, is that, for example, if I was studying more about the contracts or B101 or A101, get an example or get a sample from contracts that your firm uses on a daily basis, with consultants, with owners, with clients, so on and so forth, and just get a review that and get a little sneak peek of how it's done in real life. I feel like it has a bigger impact than being imprinted in your memory as what it's done like in real life. As well as when I was studying for, what was it, construction document or something, and I was focusing more on the building codes and reading codes, and so I was suggesting to my boss, hey, can I do a code summary of this project, because I'm studying about this and it would help me, and it helps the project. So it's like, it's a win-win situation for both. And then he would review, or he would double check with me, which helped me learn again, real life experience, but I was able to apply it to something.
Yeah, it's a good point. Double dip almost. You're learning on the job with the resources and actually doing what you're studying. So yeah, what a great way to emphasize and to retain that information. I was actually just thinking about that as you were saying it, because it was such a great point. But I also remember one time I was studying, and it was just like this question that came up. Of course I can't remember it, so I'm just going to tell in general. It's like one guy at my office told me, like, oh, this is how you do something like plan check or something that had to do with mechanical. And then it came up on a test and I answered it, but I ended up going back and researching, because I failed that test and I restudied for it. I found that the guy, he told me the wrong information. So I was like, this guy is like, he told me what they do in practice, which was like kind of a shortcut way of it. So just keep in mind, if someone tells you something, it's always good to back. You always get to double check and back it up, because these tests, they teach you, what you should, the proper way to do things, which tends to sometimes be a little bit longer than the actual real world way of doing things. So just keep that in mind. That was something I look back
very
on.
good point. Yeah, very good point. As we were studying in my boot camp study group, we were recognizing those same type of things, and we would refer to them as, that's the way NCARB wants you to answer.
Right.
Remember that it may not be what you do in real life and every day, but that's the way NCARB wants you to answer. And once you're at that point, you're pretty familiarized with the exam and the type of exam, and that the whole how NCARB puts the exams together.
Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, a lot of times it's all about test taking. It's all about understanding what the test is asking you and trying to dilute it down into a way so you can understand what the actual parts and pieces are that they're asking you, and then match that up with the answer, or come up with the answer in that sense.
Do you have an architect licensing advisor at either YAF or at state level?
At state level we do, yes. Yeah. And I can't remember his name right now, but I think he's actually transitioning out. I think we're getting a new licensing director this next 2 years. So that's transitioning this position.
Yeah, they're great resources for us if you have any questions particular to your scenario or situation, because they're directly connected to NCARB, and they get the most updated information through NCARB, and they have their own presentation that they download from NCARB. So they're a great conduit for that. They're a great resource if you have some specific questions that you have about what your situation is.
Kevin Riley actually is his name. Kevin Riley. You can look him up on AIA California. He's on the contact sheet. If anybody's interested, Kevin Riley is the name you'd want to go after. He's actually part of the San Francisco group, AIA San Francisco, but he doubles as the licensure director or manager. I forgot what the actual title is, but I've talked to him a couple times, and yeah, great resource. I've actually tried to get him on our committee at one point a couple of years ago, but just didn't work out. So, but we got Parva today, so
yeah. Oh, and another thing, a couple other things I thought about is that so if you don't want to sign up with Michael Wisika, I think there's a very active Architect ARE Facebook group that is very much just everyone who's going through this process, and a lot of questions get answered. Hey, what do I need to do for this exam? Or I'm planning on studying for this exam. What are your suggestions for books? Everything and anything that you can think of. But I believe you can also start your own group and just ask who's studying their ARE journey, and I'm sure you can meet up or connect with some people that are going through the same, or they're just starting out or studying for the same. Odds are people across the country are doing exactly what you're planning to do. So put the question out there and connect with people, and you have yourself a free accountability group.
Yeah, and you can even do that. You can even do that per test too. Because everyone takes tests in different order. So yeah, it's good to get different minds. Chiming in, even people that have already taken it and will retake it. Good resources to have on there. But like you said, Parva, is the Facebook and the social groups are a great resource, because a lot of people, a lot of people are taking these tests. Thousands of people are taking these tests every year. And everyone's got the same questions. I remember going on forums and chats and just typing the same question someone had typed, like 30 days earlier. And I was like, hey, anybody got any updates on this? And like, oh yeah, go check out this thread. They've got a whole list of resources and websites that you can go to. And that's really where the goal is at, just finding people that are entrenched in the process and know it very well. Couple minutes left here. Anybody have any dying questions or desperate questions they want to ask real quick before we got to log off?
I have one. So I'm trying to take the area a little early. So I have like 4 years and change of experience. Tim knows that. So I'm just trying to figure out, am I gonna have to wait until it's like 5 years? Is that like a hard, cutoff, or can I start taking the test now?
Parva, you want to answer that? Or you want...
I would have to refer you to the NCARB, and I think there's like a web page. It specifically has the map, and you can pick where you're, what region you're from in the United States, and exactly list out every requirements. I know that that's not the requirement in Pennsylvania. Actually, I'm sorry, that is the requirement in Pennsylvania, but it's 3 years, and Ohio does not have that requirement. So I know a lot of my colleagues, when they were wanting to start studying right after school, they would start from Ohio and then finish their exams and get reciprocity to Pennsylvania. So if you're just ready to go and you want to do it, if the state of California says you have to have 5 years experience, no ands, buts, or something like that, the phrase goes, then I would say you can look at other states that allow for emerging professionals to sit down for tests sooner than 5 years, and see how your path to licensure looks from there.
And then get reciprocity, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
After that, yeah.
Yeah.
I know California will let you take tests while you're getting your IDP hours. So that's you have to apply for it. You have to apply for your number, and and go through the right process. But in general, I would agree with Parva and say, look at the NCARB website, get familiar with the process, the timeline, because like we were talking about earlier, everyone's got a different background and how they approach the test. So Josh, I would say just knowing you, I know you could probably start taking the test based on your experience level and your degree. So,
All right. All right. Perfect. Thanks.
All right. Anybody else?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
I think Dan mentioned there are some presentations, or at least for CSC, that he was the supplemental that he was studying for. And I know at our YAF local here at Pittsburgh, we try to have some ARE series presentations, whether it be subject specific or if it's a exam specific, we try to have those series going. Is there anything similar at East Bay area?
For a series of just like presentations?
Presentation for exams, yeah.
Not in the East Bay. No, actually, I wish there was. In fact, that's probably something we should start looking into in terms of having available for emerging professionals. But no, there isn't. Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we used to have a program similar to that in the East Bay. And I know we just had a membership survey and it was actually fairly low on the list. So I think we could reach out and see if the emerging professionals are interested in it. Then hopefully people can reach out and we can start setting something like that up.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. And then the one thing I talked to you about earlier was getting the EPIC awards.
Mm-hmm.
We really want to encourage local firms as part of our program for the EPs here to see if we can implement that either end of this year or next year when we do our awards at the end of the year is something that we could include as part of the awards ceremony. So I was very interested in that, and a big reason why I reached out to you is as a resource. But so happy you were able to come here and share your information with us regarding the AREs, as well as all the great things you're doing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I know it's late, so thank you again for sticking it out. Hopefully you didn't have to take too much coffee this morning or this afternoon. And thank you, Parva. Appreciate your time and and all the resources you've given us today. Thank you very much for joining
of course.
us.
Thank you for the opportunity, and remind me if I forget to share that questionnaire with you, and if you have any further questions with that EPIC firm recognition.
I will. Yeah. I'll reach out to you later, but thanks again.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.